Hi, it's Jean Brittingham at Kept Stitches, and today I am here to show you what I have for you for Tip Demo Tuesday. So we're at the Stitching Cottage. Come on in and let me give you my tips and a demonstration for today. What am I going to show you today? Well, if you recall, during the week in review, I was talking about quilt labels and also a little hint about quilt binding. So I was showing you all these labels on these panels that I had, and I did get several of them cut out since then, and I've chosen a label for my quilt. So I'm going to show you one of my methods that I use for preparing and putting a quilt label on the back of my quilt, because I don't consider a quilt complete until it has a label on it. So this is the label that I have chosen and prepared for my quilt. And I'm going to show you how I did that. So first of all, you need some non-woven fusible interfacing, which you can see this is real lightweight, real sheer. It has a bumpy fusible side on the one side and a smooth side on the other. The bumpy side is the fusible. So what you do with that, which this one just happens to be, it's Pellin 911FF, and it is a featherweight, lightweight, fusible, non-woven interfacing. So we'll set that off to side, and what you do is you decide on a label, which we're going to use this one as a demonstration, and you will cut your interfacing to the same size as that label. And you are going to take the rough side, which is the fusible side, and this is going to look like, oh, why would you do that? But you're going to put it on the right side of your label and line it all up so that they're both even. And I'm going to explain why that's on the right side in just a minute. But it's on the right side with the fusible side down, which you would think you would never do. First of all, as a reminder, let me tell you, make sure that you, if you're going to use a light box or whatever for tracing what you're putting on your label, to do that before you put this fusible on here. Do that as your first step. Then you will do this step, which is to put the fusible non-woven interfacing on there. We're going to put that on the front, and then we're going to take it over to the sewing machine, and with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're going to stitch all the way around that, which I just happen to have one with that step completed. I don't know if you can see, but I've stitched all the way around that. Now what you're going to do is you're going to carefully pinch that interfacing and the fabric, pull them apart from each other, and you're going to take a pair of scissors and you're going to make a little snip just so you can get started on there, and you're going to carefully then, let me see if I, whoops, turn so you can see, I'm going to make a slit in that, just the interfacing layer, both ways. And I'm also going to go, it's kind of like making a T on it. But what I'm doing is I'm basically making an opening on the back that's going to be wide enough for me to turn that right side out. So now you're going to very carefully, because this is very thin and it's easy to tear. So you're not going to be rough with this. You're going to very carefully stick your fingers in there. Oops, first, one other thing. Make sure you trim off your little corners there on each, so that your corners will come out nicely turned before you turn that out. Oops, I didn't do that in camera, but I've clipped, sorry about that. I've clipped my corners on all 4 corners. Now you're going to very gently stick your fingers in there and turn this right side out. I'm just turning it, sticking my finger in each corner, carefully just turning this out. Hard to be careful and watch that you're in view of everybody seeing at the same time. Okay, so that's partially turned out. Then you're going to take your little turner and very carefully, so that you don't tear it, you're going to try and stay on the fabric part of it. Oops. And poke your corners out carefully. Get that out a little farther with my finger first. I'm just using my little purple thing. It's got a little bent end on there, and that's what I'm using to get those corners out. Like I say, you want to be very gentle with it because you will poke through the thin shear weight. We're going to get that one with my finger again a little bit first. Okay, so we have that all turned now. So now the fusible is on this side. Your label is on this side. And you cannot use an iron on it at this stage because this would fuse down to whatever you were pressing. So we're just going to lay that down, and we're going to just finger press that for now. To get the shape that we want. All finger pressed, and it's ready to put on the back of our quilt. Except for, of course, there would be writing on there. So that is how you prepare that so that it ends up like this, which you can see just my little slit in the back of this one. Everything's turned and it's ready. We're going to set that aside because now I'm going to show you, we'll get that out of the way. Now I'm going to show you my method of preparing the binding to sew down by hand to the back side of the quilt. I like to sew mine by hand. Some do it by machine. I love the relaxation of sitting and sewing it by hand. So the binding has already been sewn all the way around this quilt on the front side by machine, and it's ready to turn to the back side and stitch down. The way that I do this, make sure I'm starting on the side that I want. Yep, we're gonna lay that here. We're going to get this out of our way for right now so that we're getting a majority of this in view so you can see what I am doing. The reason that I do this method is because a lot of people, when they're sewing the back of their binding down on the back of the quilt, they are turning it over, and then they are using, a lot of people will use these little clips to clip that down. We'll put it on their binding, just like that, to hold that down and over while they're stitching. Some will use these little clips, and some, of course, will pin it. The reason I don't like and don't prefer those three methods are because those are all things that you can get your thread caught on while you're sewing it to the back. So I have a method where you don't have to use any of that stuff. So let's set that to the side. I won't need that. I won't need anything to hold it down, because what I do, and of course, we let the iron not be hot. We're going to have to give it a minute while I'm waiting just a few seconds for that to get hot. Let me show you another tip. This is my binding jar. It's a great big jar. I like to always, at the same time I'm cutting the rest of my fabric for my quilt, I like to go ahead and cut my binding. So I keep them in this jar. The binding is already made, rolled up with a rubber band, and it's labeled with what quilt that binding is for. So I have several in here that they're just waiting for the quilts to be complete. And then I have the binding and know where it is for that quilt, all ready to go when it's ready. Just keep it, and it's a nice little decoration that I keep over on my cutting surface. We'll move that also out of the way. But today I'm at my pressing surface, so you're getting to see a different quarter of the Stitching Cottage. Today So what we're going to do is from the back side, we are going to take and we are going to, with steam, you want to use steam for this, we are just going to take and we are going to press that binding first all the way around the quilt away from your seam allowance. When you've done that all the way around your quilt, then you're going to take and you are going to turn it over by hand, and you're going to press that with steam again. You're going to put that miter on your corner and you're going to give that some extra steam, because it's always the miter that's the tricky part that you want to keep. But we're going to go all the way down, all the way around your quilt, doing this with steam and the iron. And I'm going to quickly get to this end, because this is where my label is going. All right, there we go. We got it in. So I'm going to make sure that I have that pressed well, and I go off turning that binding right at that angle there, so it's easy to turn, get that miter, and we're going to go around here, because this is where I'm adding my label for you. But you're going to do that all the way around your quilt, and when you do that, look how nice and sharp and how flat that binding lays there. There's no need for any pins, no clips, no binders, nothing. You don't have to have anything holding it down, so there's nothing in the way to get caught in your thread. So now I have the little safety pin there only because I was marking which corner it was that I needed to put my label on. So we can remove that safety pin now. So now we are going to take the label that I prepared and we are going to stick that inside the binding, which I'm going to try and hold that up for you here in a second. But see how I've put that so that the two sides are in the binding, two sides aren't. Because that way, as I stitch my binding down, I'm also stitching two sides of that label down. And now is when you will go ahead and you will press that so that it is fused in place. Move that over so you can see. I'm going to press that down. And that is just so it's a temporary hold. I don't use that as the only thing to hold my label in place. I stitch it. What's nice about this method is all the edges are already turned for you. So you don't have to turn any edges. You're just going to stitch that down at the same time that you come along, stitch that binding. That side is going to be stitched down, stitch all the way around, and then you only have these two little sides that you have to wrestle with just a little bit with the rest of your quilt to stitch by hand. So there's my tip on one of the methods that I use for adding a label to the back, a tip on applying your binding so that you don't have to use any pins, any clips, or anything such as that. So I hope that this has helped some of you, and it may be a method that you want to give a try and see if you like it. And if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them in the comments. I know it was a little hard in this area to be able to see everything close up on what I was doing, but hopefully you saw enough. So just a reminder, if you like what you see on Kept in Stitches, be sure and subscribe to my channel. Go ahead and hit that bell so that you get the notifications when new videos are put up. Very shortly, people ask about, okay, what does the stitching cottage look like? So I will be doing a tour video of the inside of my stitching cottage here shortly, within the next couple days, hopefully, to put up so you can see and know what the inside of my stitching cottage looks like, and some of my organization and how I do things and how things are set up. So that's to come. And also, I do have a Facebook group. It's Friends of Kept in Stitches, Quilting Stitching Bee. You can find the link for that down in the description box. So if you would like to join that, just click on that link, answer the couple questions, agree to the rules, and you can join our Facebook group. Join in all the fun and everything that goes on behind the scenes at Captain Stitches. So thanks again for watching, everybody. I hope you have a great day. Hope it's not cold where you are like it is here, and I will see you again soon.